Spoilers ahead. Consider yourself warned. It's an understatement to say that Star Wars is massively successful. Since its debut in 1977, it has ranked in over $10 billion worldwide, capturing the hearts and minds of millions. And it's one of the biggest movie franchises of all time. Now listen, I watched Star Wars for the first time about 4 years ago, so I'm coming at this from the perspective of a somewhat recent Star Wars enjoyer, but I do love and enjoy the movies. They're definitely one of those go-to movies that we come back to over and over again. So with that out of the way, here's my unpopular opinion. I love Rogue One.
Yeah? Seriously? Oh, wow.
Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars movie, and I think it's one of the best in the franchise. I know a lot of people disagree with me and dislike this movie, but hear me out. I'm gonna try to explain why.
Okay, hit it!
Although the first movies have this nostalgic aura around them, partially because of the time they were created in, when you look at them objectively, they're not the best movies ever created. Don't get me wrong, I love the first movies, especially story-wise, but that doesn't mean they're free from criticism. From long-winded scenes that drag on for longer than they should, to blaster shots that never hit the protagonists, and a theatrical way of acting typical of the time, there's plenty of things about it that aren't perfect. But that's also part of what made them so endearing, and those things have kind of become ingrained in the Star Wars name. So without further ado, let's get into it. This movie came out in 2016, so it's obviously a modern day movie with more modern CGI, film techniques, and acting. I for one think the CGI is quite good, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Although a lot had changed in the movie industry since the first movies came out, Rogue One managed to keep the Star Wars atmosphere, unlike some of the more recent reboots. When watching, you immediately recognize it's a Star Wars movie. The visuals are there, the music is there, the witty characters are there, the epic battle scenes are there, everything is there, but with a modern twist to it. I feel like this movie is everything Star Wars needs to be, inspiring and epic. It puts forward these big emotions and quandaries that make you connect to the story and the characters. It can be cheesy at times, but it works. Star Wars is a vast and varied universe, and I love how they always try to showcase different types of beings scattered through the galaxy. Even in simple background characters that are just there for a few moments, they always make an effort to show us that this is a broad place. Case in point, in the Jedha battle scene, in the midst of all the craziness going on, you get this, a sort of albino Sasquatch trying to escape the chaos. Just for a minute or so. It would have been so easy not to care about that type of detail and just have the main characters, a few humans, and a bunch of explosions. I mean, who would notice, right? But they cared enough to still get this guy in costume for these scenes. And you gotta love the continuity. Another thing I really enjoyed about this installment is how it shows the deception and intricacies of getting things done, even when it's the good guys. Even if your cause is noble, sometimes you have to stoop low to get what you need. We've all done things we're not so proud of, and we see it happen in our government, with our politicians, with the decisions that are made for us as a society. Taking something always means giving up something else. And most times in life, there isn't a perfect option that will suit everyone and everything. Sacrifices and tough choices need to be made. And I'm glad they chose to reflect that in the movie. This film also introduces a lot of characters. You got Jin, Cassian, Saw, Galen, Krennic, Chirrut, Malbus, Bodhi, and my favorite, K2SO. That's a lot of characters to develop, yet you don't feel like they're just there to fill space. You don't feel like they're disposable. I wouldn't say that they are extremely well fleshed out, it's a sci-fi action after all, but they are developed enough that you care. You feel their struggles and their pain. You root for them, and in the end, well, I'm not going to talk about the ending yet. Furthermore, I think the cast was chosen really well. They worked beautifully with one another. The kid that plays Jin is a great pick. She totally looks on par with Felicity Jones, and you don't have to wear out your suspension of disbelief on trying to pretend like it's the same person. It truly looks like it could have been. The chemistry between Jin and Cassian is on point for me. Even though they never get the chance to be together, you can clearly see them start to care deeply for one another. And K2SO?
I'm K2SO. I'm a reprogrammed Imperial droid.
Whoever reprogrammed him gave him a sense of humor, and I'm here for it.
Jin, I'll be there for you. Cassian said I had to.
Such a great comic relief. I genuinely laughed at his comebacks every time. Somehow I find the robots to be some of the best things in all the Star Wars movies. There's even this one scene that was so funny that you could see Diego Luna just kind of losing it and trying not to laugh.
Stop right there. Where are you taking these prisoners?
These are prisoners.
Yes, where are you taking them?
I am taking them to imprison them in prison.
He is taking us to...
Quiet!
I bet they repeated that scene a bunch of times and he still couldn't stop laughing. The comedy aspects of this movie are so good.
Are you kidding me? I'm blind!
And would you look at that? Diversity that doesn't beat you over the head with it. And a strong, believable female protagonist that isn't terribly obnoxious. So it is possible.
Of course.
Well done. Okay, a very quick point for me is the pacing. In the first movies, there's long, dragged out scenes that feel out of place for an action sci-fi adventure. I don't mind slow-paced movies, but I feel like it doesn't work very well in Star Wars. In Rogue One, however, there's never a dull moment. The story keeps moving forward at a good pace. It might feel rushed to some people, but for me at least, the pacing was great. The visuals are amazing. It takes us through these different worlds, each one giving us a different element. You have a sort of Icelandic scenery, you have the trading city, the desert, the dark mountainous planet, the island, the volcanic lava-filled one that kind of looks like Mount Doom. They all look so grandiose and fantastic. When it comes to the CGI, it's pretty solid. In terms of the worlds, the ships, the battles, it all looked great to me. The only ones that were maybe not the best choice were the Leia and Tarkin CGI, and it's not that they're bad. On a first watch with Tarkin, you can't really tell right away. You can see something isn't quite right, but you can't put your finger on it. And then you realize, oh, that's CGI. The thing is, that type of CG is gonna look outdated quickly. It's gonna keep improving and it's not gonna look great in a few years. Other than that, it's really good and it's not something that ruins the movie or anything like that. Another quick point is the soundtrack. Music is a big part of Star Wars. The feeling you get from hearing those amazing orchestral pieces are beyond what words can explain. Music will carry you through the story, and it will make you feel all of it right alongside the characters. It will literally put you in the right mood, for a lack of better words. Music is essential to storytelling in movies. And Rogue One, just like the first Star Wars movies, did it very well. Maybe I'm a little biased on this one because I really like Felicity. I mean, look at her with her adorable little mouse face. How could you not like her? But trying not to let that cloud my judgment too much, I still love Jin's character. Mainly because she's believable. She goes through so much as a young child, and you can see that reflected in her personality as an adult. She puts up a strong, cold front to protect herself, but deep down she actually cares, even though she tries not to. She grew up with Saw Gerrera as a sort of father figure, surrounded by the rebels, so it makes sense that she's a really good fighter and that she holds some resentment towards the rebel movement. You can see her grow to surpass the fear of getting attached, the fear of letting herself care because she feels it will inevitably lead to pain, and even though that remains true, in the end she realizes that the people we care about are what makes life worth living, and that hope is what carries us through. And like that, we arrive at the ending. And that ending is jaw-dropping. I think there's some alternate version out there or something, but for me, that ending wraps everything in the most emotionally beautiful bow. I love when writers are willing to give the audience a tough emotional payoff. They were willing to sacrifice everything, not for the rebellion, no, but for a fighting chance against the Empire. They saw what needed to be done and went for it against all odds, inspiring others to follow suit. They knew death was a possibility, nay, a probability, but they still charged forward, going out in a glorious blaze. Without their actions, it would have been immensely harder to defeat the Empire. They gave our beloved heroes a ground to stand on. Nothing is perfect, and this movie is no exception. Not everything was done flawlessly. So here's some pet peeves. In the beginning, when Krennic comes to get Galen, Jyn and her mom escape and run. Then, her mom decides to come back with a blaster, because she couldn't leave her husband behind, I suppose. Firstly, she should have been more preoccupied with her daughter and stick with her instead of leaving her to fend for herself alone. It seems to be one of those,
so the movie can happen. Oh, okay, gotcha.
But they could have come up with a better way of taking her out of the picture. Secondly, why doesn't she take out a single person? She goes out with the blaster to try and help Galen, doesn't do anything with it, and simply gets killed.
You will never win.
Do it.
That's what you get for being a total dumbass. At least she could have tried. She could have shot someone instead of just dying pointlessly. And my biggest pet peeve / criticism here has to be that in the Scarif battle, everyone dies right after completing their tasks. Everyone has an important part to play, and as soon as they accomplish that, they get killed off immediately. I will admit that's a little annoying, and it could have been done a lot better. I couldn't find any bad reviews of this movie that changed my mind. Some of the criticisms were that there wasn't any interesting characters, which I fundamentally disagree with, that the movie was generic, that it was pointless and we didn't need it, it had too many cliches, which cliché isn't synonymous with bad. They can work if done well. Like the crying kid and a fighting crowd cliché 100% works on me. And by far, the most compelling argument I saw was that it interfered with the events of the first movie. Why weren't the events of Rogue One mentioned? This means Leia took credit for something she didn't do. It makes certain characters seem less frightening and less competent, etc. That I kinda understand, but I still don't think it's the fairest criticism. Obviously, this movie was conceptualized after the existence of the first movies. Unless you have a time machine, it would be impossible to make mention of everything that happened in A New Hope. Nor would it make sense to do that. Of course, it's not gonna fit perfectly, and that's okay. They took some liberties with the story that for some people it hinders the following events, but honestly all I can say is that I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't know how they could have made the story fit perfectly without sacrificing some elements that they wanted to incorporate. I personally think they did a great job, and I'm glad they took those liberties because the end product is a great movie, and most of all, it's an entertaining one. That's what it sets out to be, and it succeeds. You reach the end with a renewed sense of wonder, determination, and hope.